Now when you think of a great WWE game season mode, Smackdown Shut Your Mouth has to be in that top tier, with other greats such as Here Comes the Pain, Smackdown vs Raw 06 and 07. Shut Your Mouth season mode in particular was impressive as it followed such a disaster of a season mode, or technically a story mode, with Smackdown Just Bring It. The story mode of Just Bring It consisted of only 3 shows, Raw, Smackdown, pay-per-view, and then the mode is over. As you can imagine, the players were less than impressed with this, and now it was up to THQ and Utes to deliver a true season mode experience that was also unlike anything we had ever seen in a wrestling game before. Fortunately for us players, that's exactly what we got. Smackdown Shut Your Mouth season mode starts with an interactive draft that allows you to draft the roster for either Raw or Smackdown. It's a brilliant way of incorporating one of the biggest moments that happened on WWE TV in 2002 into the season mode. It also means that you get to control if your superstar is going to be on Raw or Smackdown, well, depending on if the other brand hasn't picked your superstar already. It also means you can draft your preferred superstars to the brand that you are on. So if you want storylines and matches that feature Brock Lesnar or Kurt Angle, then you have the power to pick them to be on your brand. You also might see some cutscenes of the superstar who had just been drafted. Their reaction might be positive or it could be negative. It's a fun little mini game to play before the season mode really begins. Once the first week begins, you'll be able to freely navigate your chosen superstar all around the backstage area. You can also go outside, and you can even go to the subway, take a train and go to WWE New York, or I think that place was called The World by now. You can even go and visit the owner of the brand that you're on in his office. This is where you can request title shots if you're currently not doing anything on the show. Also around the backstage area, you will encounter other superstars who will just be hanging out there waiting for you to interact with them, and it can go well and you have a nice random interaction, or you could just get punched in the face. It did really depend on what dialogue you chose to say to that particular superstar. Some of those negative backstage interactions could also lead to a backstage brawl taking place right there and then, or it could lead to you and that superstar being booked to have a match on that night's Raw or Smackdown show. The backstage free roaming in Shut Your Mouth season mode was a huge improvement to the backstage free roaming in Just Bring It story mode, with the backstage roaming being limited to only 2 minutes in Just Bring It, and now in Shut Your Mouth you can freely roam around for as long as you want. There's really no restrictions whatsoever. Once you are through with the first month of Smackdown Shut Your Mouth season mode, you quickly learn that the days of Just Bring It's version of a season mode with 1 Raw show, 1 Smackdown show and then the pay-per-view match are very much over. It's now back to the much more fitting schedule of 4 weeks of shows and then the pay-per-view match. Speaking of pay-per-view matches, winning these pay-per-view matches are rewarded with being able to unlock one of the 5 unlockables to choose from. Each pay-per-view event has a different set of unlockables, and yes, that does mean that you have to go through a few years of season mode to get every single unlockable, which also did give the mode a lot of replayability. It was also worth playing the season mode again to try and get the storylines that you never encountered in the first run. Speaking of storylines, the first few months of Shut Your Mouth season mode, in my opinion, are the strongest because of the many different scenarios and storylines that can play out depending on the choices you make, along with the superstar you choose to be. How many scenarios, you might be wondering? Well, you can choose to be the Undertaker, and by doing so you skip all the build up to becoming a contender for the title and just start off as the undisputed champion. You can be a high overall superstar, so you get a chance to be a contender for the title at the first pay-per-view. Not good enough to be a contender? Well, you can get into a storyline where the loser of the pay-per-view match is suspended. If you're the one suspended, you can choose to return 2 months later, or don't return until almost a year later and come back as an entrant for the upcoming Royal Rumble match. If you pick Stone Cold as your character, you get to choose if you want to sign with Raw or Smackdown. If you're in a tag team, you get a special storyline which teases that you and your tag team partner is about to break up, and the choices you make depend on whether they do actually split up or remain as a tag team. And if you got nothing going on at all, Kurt Angle challenges you backstage to a hair versus hair match, and if he does lose the match, he appears without hair for the rest of the season mode. Want to be in the King of the Ring tournament? Well, that is a choice you can make. And if you're the champ and you're not a fan of the King of the Ring winner, you can go down there and ruin their celebration if you want. You have the choice to also participate in the UK tour and appear at the UK pay-per-view, which leads to a European title match challenge. And if you're a created superstar, you get a whole different start to the season mode, with the created superstar having to go through and win on heat shows before even appearing on the main roster. As you can see, there's a lot of ways that the first few months can go, and the great thing about all this is that the direction that you go in, it's all up to you, it's your choice. Those first few months are way different compared to later on in the season mode, with it going in more of a linear route with a mandatory major storyline developing. When the season mode enters August 2002, the owner of the rival brand will appear on your show, calls your superstar out and asks if they want to jump ship to the rival brand. So for me, it would be jumping over from Smackdown to Raw. You can give the answer right there and then, and by saying no, you punch the rival owner in the face and triggers the start of the huge brand war storyline between Smackdown and Raw. You can also choose to give no answer If you keep giving no answer, then eventually you will jump ship to the other show. Or you can keep leaving it, make the owner wait a little bit, and then on the last week just punch the owner in the face, just to waste some time and be a jerk. Well, I guess you are a loyal jerk for sticking with your brand. At the start of this brand war storyline, you'll probably have noticed that you no longer just appear on Raw or Smackdown every week. It will now go Raw, Smackdown, then the pay-per-view. And that will remain the same until the season mode has been completed, even if you're not the undisputed champion. That's another reason why those first 4 months felt so different to the rest of the season, because other than being undisputed champion, it's the only time that there's an actual brand split in the entire season mode. What a waste of a draft. The brand war storyline felt a little bit similar to the WCW ECW Invasion storyline, which happened the year prior to Shut Your Mouth releasing. In one of the early moments in the storyline, you find out that there is a traitor on the brand, that moment being something that also happened in the Invasion storyline. And Shut Your Mouth season mode really makes the traitor twist quite entertaining. You're given the task of finding out who the traitor of your brand is. You can talk to other superstars backstage and even straight up accuse them of being the traitor. This all fits with how the WCW ECW Invasion played out in 2001, but that isn't to say that the season mode was just outright ripping off year-old storylines. They'll put their own unique twists and turns in them as well. The mixing of original storylines and storylines that actually happened on WWE TV is something that Shut Your Mouth season mode does really well. A great example of this happening is after the brand war is over. The trouble between Vince and Flair continue, with one of them bringing back Triple H at the end of the year pay-per-view. Triple H declares that he's back and beats up the undisputed champion to end the pay-per-view and the first year of the season mode. This is loosely based on Triple H's return from injury that same year, but with the added Vince McMahon vs Ric Flair storyline element to it. The rivalry of Ric Flair and Vince McMahon leads to Vince bringing in the NWO, who finally make their appearance in the season mode after almost a full year of not appearing. Later in the season mode, the NWO will recruit the returning Shawn Michaels into the NWO, which is also a moment that happened on WWE TV that year. But the added original twist was that during the brand war, Ric Flair brought in Shawn Michaels to work with him and Team Raw against Vince and Team Smackdown. Now he's gone against Ric Flair and joined up with Vince's NWO. This all puts an end to the NWO arc of the storyline, but the Vince and Flair storyline is far from over. I'll talk more about that later on. One of the other things I really like about Smackdown Shut Your Mouth season mode is that it feels like there's an actual, well, sorry to sound like Michael Cole, but an actual WWE universe is happening within the season mode, even without you, the player, being the one in the spotlight this time. For example, I didn't win the Royal Rumble match, but you will still see a few of the events play out. You'll see who the actual winner of the Royal Rumble match was, along with the build up to the WrestleMania match itself. That includes the NWO interacting with you backstage, a cutscene playing of Hogan celebrating as a new undisputed champion, and then watching the aftermath of the WrestleMania Undisputed Championship match between Hulk Hogan and the Royal Rumble winner. Like we've seen before, it's loosely based on the WrestleMania 18 match between Hogan and The Rock. It really is rare to see a WWE game have a season career or story mode where you are not the focal point, but rather just another superstar watching on the sidelines as the world of Shut Your Mouth continues without you. I wouldn't blame you in thinking that the season mode ends at this point. WrestleMania is over, and it ends on a happy note with Hogan turning face and returning back to Hulkamania. So let's start the season mode over again and try out some of the other choices that I missed on the first playthrough. But wait, Shut Your Mouth season mode surprisingly continues on for another year. It's not often that you get a mode like this which lasts for 2 years, with it being so heavy on storylines and the choices that you make. And if you've played any of the season modes after Shut Your Mouth, like Here Comes the Pain, Smackdown vs Raw, or Smackdown vs Raw 2006, you would already know that they only last for a year. Once you hit August of the second year, you'll once again, like the first year of August, see Vince and Flair encounter each other in the ring. It all looks like it's about to be the second brand war, but in a surprising and great swerve, Vince and Flair actually decide to join forces, with them both agreeing that the superstars of today are mostly weak and pathetic. With their combined force, they plan to build up a group that are loyal to the owners, to go against those who they think are weak superstars, and get rid of them once and for all. This all starts the incredible owners vs superstars storyline, which is also pretty much the last big storyline to take place in the game, as after all this, Vince and Flair hate each other again, and it all comes to an end at the final WrestleMania, with Vince McMahon facing Ric Flair for 100% ownership of the WWE. That being another storyline that actually happened on WWE TV just a few months ago, with the same outcome happening in Shut Your Mouth, with Vince gaining back control of the WWE. The season mode then ends with Vince interrupting your superstar's WrestleMania win celebration, but that doesn't last long, as you and your WrestleMania opponent team up together to tell Vince to shut your mouth and then knock him out to end WrestleMania on a happy note. Smackdown Shut Your Mouth Season Mode will go down as a legendary mode in the history of WWE games, although it is somewhat underrated and even a little forgotten about when it comes to ranking the best WWE game season modes of all time. Shut Your Mouth Season Mode also deserves a lot of credit for its amazing comeback after one of the worst season modes in a WWE game ever only happened 1 year prior. It can usually take quite a while to get these things right in a yearly video game release, but just one game later, Yuke's absolutely nailed it with this season mode. When a WWE game hits almost perfection in one thing, it does seem to make us players think that it can only go down from here. There's no way that even with the formula Yuke's now has for a season mode, that they can do it even better than what Shut Your Mouth did, right? Little did we know that arguably the greatest season mode of all time was just around the corner.